Sunday morning and welcome to the worship at St. John's. I'm Ed Turner, and for those of you who know me, you know how much I enjoy meeting and greeting and welcoming people at the main entrance on Sundays. With the pandemic, that has become completely impossible, but I am glad to be able to greet you today. For those of you who don't know me, please don't let this welcome and greeting dissuade you from enjoying the rest of the service. Welcome.
I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved, just like a tree planted by the water. I shall not be moved.
God blesses those who refuse evil advice, those who will not follow others as they veer off God's path of righteousness into the dark.
God delights in those who love the ways of peace, mercy, and faithfulness, those who hunger after God's Spirit.
They are like trees planted by streams of water, trees that yield fruit in season.
God will lift these people up and make them prosper not only for their sake, but for the betterment of the whole world.
God Almighty, early in the morning our song shall rise to Thee. Holy, 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 merciful and mighty, God in three persons, Blessed Trinity. Holy, 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 though the darkness hide Thee, though the sinful human eye Thy glory may not see, only Thou art holy, there is none beside Thee, perfect in power, in love and purity. Shall praise Thy name in earth and sky and sea. Holy, 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 merciful and mighty, God in three persons, blessed Trinity.
Let us go to God in prayer. Holy Lord, for our lives to be whole, for our lives to be complete, for us to be whole people, we must place you at the center of them. We must place you, your compassion, your truth, your grace, your mercy, your righteousness at the center of our lives and at the center of our being. Your call on our lives is different from the various calls on our lives that we receive from society. In society, we are asked for our money. We may be asked for our vote. And we may be led to believe that if we give what is asked of us, that we will receive what we want. We are taught by society that certain aspects of ourselves are valid. But you ask for our heart. And you love and value all of us, all of who we are. And you desire for us to be complete, whole people. And you ask for all of us so that we can stay that way. And you also ask us to value that in other people, to help other people to be whole people as well. So for us to live in accordance with your compassion, your truth, and your grace, when we are able to do this, we live out of your righteousness. And indeed, this righteousness can put us into conflict with someone else's sense of security, someone else's desire to judge. Can put us into conflict with someone else's financial prosperity and maybe even our own. Living in this way can put us into conflict with lots of other lesser values. And yet you call us and you remind us that we are to value you and your character so that we can make it our own, even if that results in some conflict. We ask for your help in doing so, for we know that this is your way, this is the way of Jesus, and we seek to follow the way of Jesus. And because of that, we pray the way that he taught us to pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
This is a reading from Matthew 5, verses 1 through 2 and 10 through 12. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kind of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you.
For a world where everyone respects each other's ways, where love is lived and all is done with justice and with praise. Oh, for a world where goods are shared and misery relieved, where truth is spoken, children spared, equality achieved. The poor are rich, the weak are strong, the foolish ones are wise. Tell all who mourn outcasts belong, who perishes will rise. Oh,
Throughout the history of humanity, we have oppressed and murdered one another simply because we are a different culture or a different religious belief or practice. We as Christians are as guilty as any. We have treated Muslims and Jews and Buddhists and Hindus and people of other traditions in ways that do not reflect the heart of God. And we, in our own Christian movement, from the beginning, have experienced suffering and shame, oppression, murder, and death. We have both been the victimizer and we have been the victims. Let us remember some of those by name who have gone before us in this path of suffering and persecution and martyrdom. John the Baptizer, Stephen, James son of Zebedee, Simon Peter, Paul, Andrew, Matthew, Thomas, Bartholomew, Barnabas, Mark, Polycarp, Justin, Agnes, Perpetua, Felicity, Cyprian, Boniface, Flora, Maria, Thomas Becket, John Huss, Joan of Arc, William Tyndall, Thomas Helwys, Margaret Ball, Lorenzo Ruiz, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Victims of the Nazi Holocaust, 8 million Soviet non-Jews, 6 million Jews, 3 million Polish, 500,000 Serbians, 400,000 Romani Gypsies, 270,000 disabled persons, 200,000 Freemasons, 25,000 Slovenians, 15,000 homosexuals, 5,000 Jehovah's Witnesses, all of those groups victimized, murdered in the death camps of the Nazi movement. In more recent decades, we have learned the stories of Francis Ford, Kamar Zia, Martin Luther King, and Oscar Romero.
El Salvador in the 1970s was a country deeply divided. Most Salvadorans lived in extreme poverty, while a small number of rich families controlled most of the wealth and political power. Violence was regularly used against those who stood up to challenge this inequality. This was the situation when Oscar Romero became Archbishop of San Salvador, the nation's capital, in 1977. Originally, he was seen as a safe pair of hands, someone who would not rock the boat. But as Archbishop, he would regularly hear first-hand accounts of the ordinary working people who would be threatened or disappear without trace. Romero said, "The word of God is like the light of the sun. It illuminates beautiful things, but also things which we would rather not see." Weeks after he had become Archbishop, his close friend, the Jesuit Father Rutilio Grande, was killed. It was then that Archbishop Romero began to speak out. If they have killed him for doing what he did, then I too have to walk the same path. Each week, after many hours of research, consultation, and prayer, Romero used his lengthy Sunday homilies as a platform. He condemned the repression and would name and account for every man, woman, and child who had been targeted and killed or disappeared. He used his sermons to challenge those in power. It is not God's will for some to have everything and others to have nothing. In a time of heavy press censorship, his sermons, broadcast nationwide over the radio, were the only way that people could hear the truth about the atrocities happening in their country. It was a dangerous path. Receiving death threats, Romero knew that one day soon he could be killed. Still, he remained utterly committed to carrying out his mission. Days before his assassination, he said, "As a Christian, I do not believe in death without resurrection. If they kill me, I will rise again in the people of El Salvador. A bishop may die, but the Church of God, which is the people, will never die." On the eve of his assassination, he urged soldiers and police not to follow orders to kill. "The peasants you kill are your own brothers and sisters. When a man tells you to kill, remember God's words, 'Thou shalt not kill.' In the name of God and in the name of this suffering people, I beg you, I beseech you, I order you in the name of God, stop the repression." At 6:26 p.m. on 24th of March 1980, while celebrating Mass, Archbishop Romero was shot dead at the altar in the chapel of the cancer hospital where he lived. Oscar Romero gave his life to speak out on behalf of the poor and oppressed in his country. Romero's example remains an inspiration to millions across the globe who work for justice, reconciliation, and peace.
Oscar Romero was only Archbishop of San Salvador for 3 years, but during that time he ceased to merely hold a position as Archbishop in a city, and he became, well, the shepherd for all the oppressed people throughout El Salvador, the nation. His sermons were broadcast across the radio as he started naming the oppressors and their actions against the oppressed people. He became aware that he had a spiritual ear and he had a responsibility to help people understand that the gospel of God was more than words of comfort. It was also words of challenge when there is injustice abound. In a sermon in the year prior to his death, he offered these words: "The church wants to disturb people's consciences. The church wants to provoke a faith crisis in the lives of people. A church that does not provoke a faith crisis, a gospel that does not disturb, a word of God that does not rankle the comfort zones in people's lives, a word of God that does not touch the concrete sins of society in which it is being proclaimed. What kind of gospel is that?" And then he added, "Oh, just nice, pious considerations that bother nobody. That's the way many people would like our preaching to be." Beloved, if you thought following Jesus was supposed to be a walk in the park, you're mistaken. Jesus, you remember, offered these words: "Anyone who wants to become my follower must deny themselves, take up the cross, and follow me." Jesus was not punching tickets to Disneyland. Jesus said, if you want to find your life, then you're going to need to lose your life. You're going to need to lose your life in order to find life. And the way that you lose your life is you lose your life in a relationship with his mission. And then you find a purpose that transcends daily drudgery. You become involved in a ministry in the world that transcends all of the injustices that we come across. Most of you know that my middle school years, my father pastored a church in Kansas City, and he integrated that church racially. It was the late 60s, and our family went through quite a few experiences of ostracism and defriending, unfriending. People left the church, never returned. But Dad felt a sense of calling to serve the people who were moving into that community. Most of the members of that church moved out to the suburbs of Lee Summit and Independence and Ruskin Heights, but we were right there off Cleveland Avenue. During those years, I began to develop a spiritual ear, but I did not fully understand it. After about 3 or 4 years of that, Dad realized the toll it was taking on him and the toll it was taking on our family. I would oftentimes find my father burdened in prayer, awake late at night or early in the morning or in the middle of the night. I was aware that he was under stress and struggle, but I didn't realize till later the toll it took on him. During my sophomore year, we moved from Kansas City to Western Kentucky, to a rural area, and it was much more pastoral, much more slow in its pace and rhythm of life. Until my junior year of high school in January, my father was on a trip to Israel with a lot of other good Christian Baptists, and my mother, deciding she would be take an appropriate action as the minister's wife, decided she would go to Owensboro to visit hospitals. But on the way, on a foggy morning, a train hit her car right at the driver's side door. She barely survived that accident, and our family walked through all kinds of challenges once again. This time very, very different, though. Once we found my father 4 days later in the hospital in Jerusalem with the Hong Kong flu and got him home. Several days had passed, and my spiritual ear was continuing to grow as a 16-year-old kid. Through that spring, I started listening to my dad's sermons in a different way. I was watching him all day long and all evening long care for our mother as her health and her body rebuilt its strength from the inside out over those years. And I watched him care for that congregation. And I remembered what had transpired a few years earlier in my early adolescence, and my spiritual ear became more keen. And one night in a sermon, I remember, in the spring of my 16th year, I remember my father preaching a sermon. I'm sure he had preached on the theme of suffering as part of the Christian faith before. But on that night, on that Sunday night, I heard him. I was one of just a few teenagers usually there, sitting back on the back row. But on that night, I heard him. And he asked this question, and it still resonates in my ear now and then, my spiritual ear. If someone brought you up on charges of being a follower of Jesus, would the prosecutors be able to find enough evidence to convict you, to find you guilty? I'd never thought of following Jesus in that kind of way, that there should be evidence or some indicators that were visible. Jesus said these words, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely because of my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who came along before you." This last beatitude changes the entire emotional climate of the blessed life, the beatitude conversation space. In these beatitudes, Jesus has described how we are living right side up in an upside down world. And when Jesus says that the blessed life is indicated or punctuated by humility, comfort for our tears, meekness, pursuing the ways of God, mercy, purity of heart, and peacemaking, well, we nod with affirmation. But now this beatitude comes along, this last beatitude, this 8th beatitude. Jesus says there are danger signs all along the path of discipleship. You should expect trouble ahead. This upside down world says it's easier to just go with the flow, be unnoticed, just be religious, but don't go overboard with it. keep up appearances. Float along with the current. Don't cause waves. Avoid all expressions of boldness, and don't ever make a real serious commitment. However, discipleship in the way of Jesus means that we are learning how to follow a suffering servant. What Jesus is teaching you in this beatitude, in this school of discipleship, is this. When you live with humility, people are not going to like it. When you express a sense of sadness, when you're moved to tears by actions that are unjust, people are not going to like you caring about that suffering and that injustice. When you express meekness in the face of power, when you pursue God's ways, when you express mercy, people are going to ridicule you. They're going to condemn you. When you pick up the tools of peace building, when you construct the shalom of God's mission, when you flesh out purity of heart and sincerity and integrity of faith, you're going to be persecuted, reviled, and falsely accused. Jesus harkens back to the prophets, and he says that when you live this blessed life, when you live right side up in this upside down world, you're going to be like Daniel in the lion's den. You're going to be like Jeremiah imprisoned in a sewer, Isaiah killed by King Manasseh, Ezekiel and Habakkuk killed by the people they rebuked, Zechariah slain by King Joash, and Elijah driven into exile. Jesus is not saying you should get up every morning and want to know, how can I be mistreated today? He is saying that if you are living as a disciple of his in this world, you're going to experience some sad treatment. You're going to be oppressed. And it's not just the oppression by people who are against you because you're just different as a faith tradition or as a culture. There will be people who go under the name, say they live under the umbrella of Christian faith, who will revile you and falsely accuse you if you take this discipleship life seriously, this blessed life of God. And so here we have this 8th beatitude, seemingly contrasting, but actually reminding you that in all of these beatitudes, you should expect to be treated the way Jesus was treated. Jesus refers to these prophets. You remember he was disturbed greatly after he learned of John the Baptizer's death. Jesus himself was mocked, ridiculed. They said that he was mentally deranged. He was called a devil, and eventually arrested, falsely accused, beaten, and murdered. How dare we think that we can follow Jesus and never experience any suffering or ridicule because we're standing in this way of discipleship. When we address the injustices of our own time, people will sometimes disagree with us, be offended by us. Beloved, occasionally, I have to be reminded myself of how much I like the comforting words of Jesus, the shepherd words of Jesus. But Jesus has a prophetic voice too. And if you're disturbed by the prophetic voice of Jesus, it's just a sign that you're not dead yet. It's a sign that the life of God, the Spirit of God, is at work in you. And you have the opportunity to grow, to awaken into your spiritual ear, and to learn more and more how to follow Jesus by addressing how the gospel is to reshape people's lives. Now and then, once or twice a year, someone might send me a note. They're not related to our church at all, but they'll drop me a note or send me an email or a text or comment on something I've placed on Facebook, explaining to me how we are so ungodly and unbiblical as a church for welcoming anyone into membership or into ordination in Christian service. Or someone will tell me that we don't have any right at all to condemn or to criticize even those who are in positions of power but are treating human beings in ways that are inhuman and out of touch with the heart of God. I have decided that I'm going to continually receive those notes the way I've always received them, as a sign, as an indicator that we're paying attention to our spiritual ear. But so long as we are being oppressed and reviled and falsely accused, then we're probably walking the life of discipleship. Now and then I'll read an article or a book and it will say, these are the indicators of a healthy and a vital community of faith, or a healthy and vital individual faith. Here's what I would offer to you, my friends. What if St. John's becomes a church more and more and more that grows and says, you know what? We are a healthy and vital church because here you find the Beatitudes. You find humility here. You find purity of heart here. You find meekness here. You find people who hunger and thirst for the ways of God here. You find in this community of faith people who are picking up the tools of peacemaking and peace building, and we are trying to construct the world more and more in the shalom of God's mission. And we expect now and then to be oppressed. Jesus said, in this world you're going to have trials and tribulations, and people are not going to like you, but take courage. I've overcome the world. Oscar Romero told his people, the way to be involved in the will of God is to be involved in the mission of God, working against the oppressors and freeing the oppressed, walking this discipleship path as followers of Jesus. Well, this concludes our looking at the Beatitudes as the 8th one. Next Sunday's message, I will speak a little bit about the Beatitudes and their influence in the world. But today I simply remind you again, these are indicators of Christian faith. You are living right side up in an upside down world. And in doing so, you're probably, well, as our good Baptist brother John Lewis put it, from now and then, you're going to get into some good trouble. I look forward to getting into some more good trouble with you in the years ahead. Amen and amen.
What does the Lord require of us to show our love and praise? What sacrifice can we bring as we our voices raise? The Lord has spoken, we have heard of what the Lord requires. God shows the way through the living word. Christ's Spirit doth inspire. God's love and light. These are our prayers and praise. When you are persecuted by a world that does not see, keep heart and faith, for blessed are you. The kingdom of God is yours.
Well, once again, thank you for being with us in worship today. Week by week throughout this summer, we have walked through a glance at these Beatitudes. Living through this pandemic has reminded us that there are so many needs in the world, and it reminds us that we need one another to touch those needs. I miss you. I miss being with you in person, and I appreciate your faithfulness to joining with us each week in this virtual or digital worship experience. I commend you once again as a community of faith for the ways in which you are serving together in the life of this world. Last week, you elected a new leadership group to guide us into a new church year, and we will continue to be in prayer for each of you as you prepare for this new church year of leadership. Know that as we move forward as a community of faith, we will continue week by week to pray for one another, to serve one another, and to see how we can touch the world with the gospel of Jesus Christ, even if that means causing some faith crises here and there, and even if it calls us now and then to have a faith crisis ourselves. May our mission of God, our involvement in God's mission, continue to unfold within us with sincerity, with growth, because this is the St. John's way. Shalom.
does the Lord require